Hey everybody, welcome back to the Jubilee, Freedom, and Shalom podcast. I have to say, Nate, every time that we intro, you smile, and it makes me really happy. I don't know why you're smiling. I don't know if you think it's funny that we intro like we do, but I appreciate it. It makes me feel good about myself. But
I want to bring some positive.
Yeah, positivity. If you're watching, I guess if you're listening, you can maybe hear him smile.
Yeah.
You hear his mouth move.
Yeah.
It's kind of gross.
Yeah. No, thanks.
Yeah, we're back for another episode. We're almost to episode 20, which is crazy. Yeah, we're talking again this week about the image of God. Before we get there, I did have a random thought that I wanted to share. So this next weekend, Emily and I are going away for her birthday weekend. And there's a family that goes to church with us. They're awesome. But you know Mark Moore, or you've met him, you've heard of him. But they bought a camper van. It's a Dodge Caravan, like just a minivan that's been turned into a camper. It's called the Juicy. It is bright green and bright purple. And we're taking it this weekend to the mountains and going camping. It has one of those pop tops on the top that you sleep in, and
Right.
but it has like a huge marine battery in it, so you can have lights and cook and charge your phone and live luxuriously.
That feels like an adventure.
I know, but we haven't gone yet, but I just walked through it yesterday because we had an event at their house, and he was just kind of showing me like there's some, since it's not old, but it's used, so there's some like finicky things with it. You just got to know, like, bump this, hit this, like jiggle this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it was making me, I went home and was looking up all sorts of mobile home, not like a nice, huge, luxurious RV, but I was like, I want it to be like weird looking, and like, I want it to be a thing. So, if I end up building a tiny home trailer relatively soon, you'll know why. But I was just kidding. I know we've talked about that a lot before, but
maybe your experience will ground you a little bit more.
I hope not. I hope it gets me more excited.
Yeah, maybe it will.
We've had some. So we live in a rental house, and the house has been great, and especially with coronavirus stuff, we've been able to do all the youth group stuff over here. Good yard, good space inside to spread out, and it's been really good. But it has its flaws, which every house does, and so that is what it is. But we have another year or so on our lease, and so we're kind of thinking, like, do we stay here? Do we do we move somewhere else? The location is awesome and all this stuff. So I was just thinking, it has had me thinking, what if we just like built a house on wheels? And then I started thinking, what does Amazon do with all of the Sprinter vans they buy that are their delivery trucks? Because I cannot believe that they drive them longer than 150,000 miles. I bet you they get rid of them. And then I'm sure they have to get the logo off so that if someone buys it again, they don't get sued for something that wasn't their fault or whatever. But like, where do they go? Because I want one of those. And then
I think the Tesla Cybertruck would be my go-to vehicle for camping.
Put a pop-up tent, a rooftop tent on it.
Well, they're talking about so the bed of the truck already has like a rolling cover on it that's like I don't know if it has solar panels on or not, but it covers the bed of the truck. And they're also talking about the wall that separates the bed from the cabin, like rolling down, like underneath the truck, to where basically you could like have your sleeping bags and just lay down the seats and lay all the way through. And then you could set the air conditioning for a certain temperature, to kick on. And you would just be able to sleep with your feet kind of in the truck bed and your heads like towards the cabin.
It's luxurious.
So and have some I think it's all about showering and toilet at that
Yeah.
point. Because
But
like
there are ways to get around that.
there's a way. I'm just saying like those are the only things that,
You
you
have
know,
to
you can
solve.
sleep in a car, you can get all your storage stuff and your cooking, like all that. I got it. But it's
But I feel like with
it's
the
where
truck,
showers happen.
yeah, I feel like with the truck you can load up a bunch of stuff and then you would just have to kind of pull it out, put it back every
Yeah.
time.
So that would be my
That would
my
be your choice.
go-to
I
vehicle
actually just
to
met
camp in.
well, didn't just meet her. There's a girl at our church that I just found out her brother-in-law works for SpaceX.
Oh,
That's pretty crazy. But anyway,
so
I'm
they're
jealous.
thinking about taking SpaceX public.
I
If you
know.
want to own a little bit of it,
I kind of
they
do, but
they
also,
valued it for, I think, 100 billion was what they were valued as. So
anyway,
are
so
you
the image of God.
yeah. Well, the thing is, like, honestly, Elon Musk in a lot of ways,
Case study.
I think, is taking on the role and responsibility of someone who sees himself as, I'm not saying that Elon Musk thinks he is an image of Yahweh or that he is perpetuating Yahweh Elohim's will on earth. I'm just saying that I think Elon Musk is someone who takes that, like, I am not going to shirk my responsibility to look at the problems, look at the things, and not just be like, that's too, it's too complicated. I'm just going to go back to bed and take a nap.
Yeah.
I feel like he's someone that
Takes it head on.
if he were doing, I wish there was someone out there doing everything that he is up to, except doing it with the motivation and the thought process behind
For
it
the
being
kingdom.
the kingdom. Exactly. Because I think he is tackling some problems. He's doing things. He's spending his life like someone who is animated and motivated by the thought that my life is not nothing.
I wonder I wonder if and how his ventures would look different if it was a person with a kingdom mindset.
I
I
think,
don't know how different or if they would be different, but I'm sure there would be some differences if that's
well,
what their end goal was. But
in our last episode, we talked about history having a thrust. It's moving to a point. We're not just on a treadmill and
right.
it's just like live, die, live, die, live, die, and it happens forever. And that
Right.
we're not getting anywhere. America's not, I think it's just like, well, what is America trying to accomplish? Well, liberty and justice for all. But like, when do we know that we are there? It's not a place, it's a state of mind, or it's a reality. But I think for Elon, the thing that is getting most of us over the last 200 years have been like, make some money, try to get comfortable and retire and try not to break your back, trying to get to your retirement. Like, get to retirement, peace out, and do whatever you want to do until you inevitably die. There's not this huge, like, no, we've got to build this thing because once that's built, then like we'll be in heaven, or like, humanity will have arrived at this big goal we all have. But for him, he actually has that. And that's what I think a lot of people rally to him, is because Elon has given the first secular goal that is past just an individualistic, like, just get rich, get famous, get comfortable, and just enjoy it as much as you can. And, then you're going to die.
Yeah.
He's the first person who in a long time has said, no, we have this big goal out in front of us and that it can be achieved. And that is human beings living on Mars, or what he says is making humans an interplanetary species. And you're like, well, no one has actually said anything like that in a long time. We've just been kind of stocking, squirreling away some money in the 401k, hoping we can retire one day and, just like try to take it easy.
Right.
There's not been this whole like, hey, we're going to the moon, man. Like we're doing this thing. Like, and when we get there and we can arrive, we're all going to high five each other and be like, we did it. I don't think we've had that in a long time.
Yeah.
And the thing is that Christians should have always had that all along. But it betrays it. Yeah. And some have, but it really does betray and witness against a lot of us, because we have been kind of mediocre human beings that haven't had much direction, and we're very aimless. And it's like, well, I think that betrays, in us, that we don't really have a sense that history is going somewhere, and we're a part of it getting to that place. And so,
Yeah, and I mean that ties directly into what we wanted to start this episode talking about. We talked about last episode the image of God, what it is. If you lived in biblical times, what would that have sounded like to you for someone to claim, a follower of Yahweh, to claim that they were an image bearer? And then we kind of started to spell out what that means practically, like how do you live? But what as far as our podcast title and what we have talked about in the past, what to you is the huge connection between Jubilee, Freedom, and Shalom and image bearers, being you yourself, or just followers of Jesus, being not just people that run the treadmill and then die, but people that are actively carrying out the will of God? How does that affect Jubilee, Freedom, Shalom in your mind?
I think, just like we talked about in the last episode, where Jesus had such an intimate knowledge and understanding of nature where he could walk on water. I don't, maybe some people just think that was a magic trick, that he just had some like wizard-ish power like it. But Jesus said he was a human being.
Mm-hmm.
He said he was a human being. And if he did anything, he did it through the power of the Spirit. And that's the same Spirit that's promised to us. I think it's because of deep, deep understanding of nature and knowing the Father, and therefore knowing how he, just observing nature. And I don't know how you explain the, like, cast your nets on this side and there's thousands of fish and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But the way I put it in my brain is that he intimately knew God, and therefore intimately knew what God made, and to where he's like seeing the code behind,
It's like the Matrix.
He's like seeing it
Sees
in
the
those,
source
like,
code.
yeah, he's like seeing something and noticing something that we're just not, because we're not paying attention.
I
And
think
so,
he had a full, not only understanding of the character of God, I think he also had understanding of what God was trying to accomplish in the world.
right.
And I think one that's huge for us, especially in American Christianity, is I think that Jesus had a really, like, he fully 150,000% believed that he was the Son of God, and that he was, as a human being, had the ability to do certain things. And I think there's a lot of that part of it, as an image, being the image of God and having authority over the earth to rule and to reign, that we hear that authority to rule and to reign, and we immediately go negative and think like, well, that sounds like really intense and harsh. But I think Jesus had a really strong belief that he had been granted as a human being. He knew that human beings were granted an authority over created things, and he actually believed it. It wasn't a thought experiment. It was a legitimate practice. And I think when he goes and heals, all the healings that we see, walking on water and doing all this stuff, and he's like, I'm doing it. Like, he feeds 5,000 and he expected the disciples to do it. And they're like, what? No, what? You feed them. Like, what? We don't have money for this. And he's like, you don't need money. Watch. And we're just like, yeah, I could never do that. Like, we have no faith. We have no belief that we could actually do things like that. And I'm speaking in myself too. I talk about it, and I don't necessarily, I'm not as committed to it as I would like to be. But I think that he knew there was no question about the things that he could accomplish being an image bearer, I guess is the way to say it.
Right. And, it kind of reminds me of the fruits of the Spirit. Fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. It's like, once you're living into the fact that you are the image of God, and you're embracing that in the best sense, that there is no law. It's limitless at that point.
Mm.
It kind of is a paradox where you're accepting that I'm not God, and I have to move in his direction and know him and know what he made, and like, so it seems like it's kind of like a slave's existence to serve God, to know him, to come in his direction. But in doing that, there becomes a limitlessness to
The
what you'll
freedom.
experience there. Yeah, the
Yeah.
freedom. And so I think someone who, like, what does Jubilee have to do with the image of God? I think someone who sees the value of Jubilee and the goodness of Jubilee and what it can do for the world is someone that is seeing a God idea
Mm.
and saying, why fight that? Like, why go against that? Like, that's the way we should be living our lives, because
Yeah.
this has the heart of God in it. And that means that I should be all about it.
Yeah.
So that's where I see Jubilee. And
And that brings freedom, which is
yeah,
what you're talking about. That's the side of the coin that seems weird, that operating within God's will and character means more freedom. Um, but it's
actually
not,
brings,
yeah,
yeah,
like real freedom. Yeah.
how submitting to something can actually bring freedom. That
Yeah,
seems like a conundrum.
it does.
Like, you got to have one or the other. You can't
Yeah.
submit and be free.
But the
But
reality is the image of God is the key to that, in my opinion. And that was a huge thing to hit home for me when I first listened to the Bible Project episodes, that submitting to the will of God is freedom. Then you're like, okay, how does that work? God has created us in his image and has granted us authority. Again, like I said last episode, we're not just his children. He's given us authority. He's decided to share with us. And it
right,
doesn't make any sense why he would want to do this with us, because we screw it up so much. But the key is we are submitting to say, you have ultimate authority, God. You are the creator of all things. We want to bring your creation forward. We want to be a part of moving it forward. We want to be a part of love and grace in the world, in our relationships, and how we handle creation. We want to be harnessing all of the potential, as the Bible Project says, of creation. That doesn't mean we're just your slaves doing your handiwork. He has granted us, in creating us in his image, everything that is true about God can be true about a human being. The creativity and the wisdom, all of that is there. We
yeah,
have the ability to have all of those things. And so God has said, I want to share with you, and I want you to come up with stuff. Like, if you were just clones doing my will, that wouldn't be love. I love you, and you are uniquely made and made in my image. Therefore, you have creativity. There's no such thing as creative people and not creative people. Like that, there, everyone is creative.
yeah.
And
That kind of
we're
goes
all
back to the leadership thing we were talking about, where it's like, I think everyone's called to lead
right.
and to step up and realize, oh, I'm like a king or a queen on planet Earth. That means the same thing I think of when I think of kings. If I was a king or a queen, I would do this and I would do that and I would do this.
Right.
Yeah, if I had $1 million, I would do this and I would fix this thing. And it's
Yeah.
like, you're supposed to be doing that right now. You don't need to
Right.
wait. Like, you've already been made an image of God, and you need to be looking at everything God does give you and pretend like it's your kingdom to reign over, but just do it with the heart of God, or you'll epically fail at it.
Right. And you look at the example of Jesus, everything he did, he said over and over again, like, I do the will of my Father. And he had the freedom. Like, there isn't, you wouldn't look at Jesus's life and be like, it's just like a slave doing the will of God. No, there's a ton of
Yeah,
freedom in that. It's that God is the creator. Therefore, he has the ultimate wisdom
yeah, I think
about
so.
how all of this works and the best way it can work and how we can work best with it.
Right. I think someone who rejects creativity is rejecting their image.
Yeah.
Like, you were made in the image of God. God's a creator God.
Right.
And if you don't think you're creative, now we may need to redefine how narrowly we
Sure.
define creativity.
Sure.
It's not just writing a song,
Sure.
or painting, but like, we need to be leaders, because God's a leader. He's I don't know, and he's creative, and he has these other qualities. He's loving, and he's also just, and so yeah, maybe we need to like flex what we mean when we say those things a little bit, but still to run away from those, I think, is to shirk the responsibility and the calling. And so just to kind of back up a little bit, even the animals were given the charge to go out and be fruitful and multiply.
Yeah.
Everything that God made says be fruitful and multiply.
Yeah.
So what makes humans different is not be fruitful and multiply, is that, roll over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and every thing that creeps along the ground, and have dominion over them and bring order to them. And I think that's another thing where a lot of us throw our hands up and we're just like, too complicated for me, man. I'm not smart enough for all this, or whatever excuse we give for just throwing our hands up and giving up on a situation. Say some other person's got to figure that out.
Yeah.
I think that's denying your image of God.
Yeah.
And so here's one thing that I really liked. Tim Mackie said, and this kind of goes back to the idols, like why make an idol? God already made his image, as human beings are walking, talking images of him. But I really like, we are where heaven and earth coalesce, where heaven and earth overlap. Like we're these dirt people, like we're earth, but we're made in the image of God. And so there's something divine about us.
Yeah.
And so heaven and earth is overlapping in us. And it's like, on one hand, we should take ourselves and our lives so much more seriously than we do. But we're also dirt, so we shouldn't take ourselves so seriously at all. And a lot of people would think like, okay, well, pick one? Which one are you talking about? No, I think it's both. Like, we are the overlap. We're the place in between heaven and earth. It's where heaven and earth both exist in one place. We are kind of a paradox within ourselves. It's like, hey man, stop thinking so much about yourself. You're just a little blip on the radar of time. The earth is just a pale blue dot out there in the universe, and you're just like one pixel on the screen of that pale blue dot out in the universe. And you're like, yeah, I'm small in the midst of it all. But there's this other side of the coin where it's like, I should think very highly. God has put me here to literally represent him, to act as a God, but I'm not a God. Right. Does that make sense? It's like, he's actually asked me to act as a God, but I'm not a God. Yeah. So take yourself so seriously, your life so seriously, every day that he gives you alive so seriously, but also remember you're made of dirt and that you're nothing. You're nothing at all. And don't take yourself so seriously.
And your worth, the thing to take seriously is the things that God has granted you. Like the things that he has said about you, those are the things you take seriously.
Right. It's like, I know that I am a light bulb that will never be able to turn itself on. God is the source and the author of life. He is the energy. But I have been made to light up in his presence, to come alive in his presence, to be more and cast light out all around me. But I can never, ever convince myself, should never convince myself that the light comes out of me. It is technically coming out of me, but no,
it's not me.
It doesn't. I can't illuminate myself. And so I can only be a vessel for this awesomeness that God is, because he made me to be that. And he gave me this calling in life to be him, not in his absence, but just to be up to what he is up to. And that's something about that image of I am earth and heaven meeting. Right. If you can't take that seriously in your own life, how can you seriously pray the prayer of, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven? If you're not taking seriously your image bearing, I am an image of God. I'm made of dirt and I'm divine somehow, and it's all in one thing, then how could you ever reconcile the heaven reality with the earth reality if you're not reconciling it within yourself? You can't pray that prayer and not be taking it seriously within yourself, because you can't bring anything lead anyone somewhere you've never been. You
Right.
can't, you just got to start within yourself and accepting that's who I am. That's who God
Yeah.
made me.
Yeah.
And what comes out of that, I think, is heaven and earth becoming one again when we embrace that. But if we keep shirking our responsibilities, be like, who am I? We're going to keep handing the responsibility of being an image bearer to people that, like you said before, are willing to pick up the authority of what it is to be God, but not do it with God's heart and mind. We're going to hand it over to people that run our big businesses, our governments, our churches, they just want power,
Mm.
but wanting power is not the heart of God.
And the answer is
So,
not to just to complain about that fact. The answer is to take up the responsibility of being that. Like, if you really believe that you're created in the image of God and that you have authority, like, that should affect when you when you run into something or someone, instead of just complaining that, this business is too big and whatever, this person is greedy. Like, what do you expect? Literally, what do you expect? Like, that complaining doesn't help anything. Instead, the answer should be, what, as an image bearer, coming in with the wisdom of God, knowing it is not my own, but his, what can I do to be, like you're saying, that light bulb, to be the light that shines, that reflecting the glory of God.
yeah. And I think it's biblical. I think there's a parable, if God entrusts you to little and you squander that, why would he entrust you with something ginormous?
Right.
And so really stop and think to yourself right now. What are the things that God gives me every day that I literally have, the power of a king over or a queen over? My time, my house, my car, my yard, whatever it is, the relationships that I have, like, what has he given you? And are you exercising your image over those things?
Yeah.
Not like, again, it's not this like strong arm them into,
No.
manipulating them in bad ways. We're starting with the heart of God, of course.
Yeah.
But are you doing that? And if you're
Mm.
not, why would God give you any more than that? Because you're probably looking at your backyard going, it's just a backyard, man. Who cares?
Mm-hmm.
It's just this little crappy thing. My time, my life is just a little crappy thing.
Yep.
Who am I in the midst of this whole history, all the
Yeah.
course of human history? Well, then why would he give you anything more than that?
Yeah.
And
I
and
think,
I encourage all of us to take that super seriously and be like, look, I think you actually do a lot with the things that God has already given you.
right.
Maybe a high school student listening to this going like, I ain't got nothing,
Bro, I got
man.
nothing.
I got some textbooks and that's it.
Yeah.
No, but you got relationships, you got time,
Yeah.
and you're coming up, on a time of life where you're going to get responsibilities and
Yeah.
resources, and go ahead and live into that now. Don't wait. Don't sit back and have this realization one day. And, one of the ways that me and Daniel have kind of processed this is, again, it starts with you and how you look at yourself and whether you're really taking this seriously. And I think a lot of us, we don't realize that we are stripping away our identity is really in the wrong place a lot of times. We don't realize that we're
Yeah. We don't really pick up on all the little things that we do and say to ourselves or
and
about ourselves that are really informing how we then operate, like the way we're
right.
identifying ourselves.
So how would one know, and that they have really, really grounded their identity, which is what we're really talking about now. We're talking about like, hey, where's your identity really? Is it in the fact that you are made in God's image? And when you say that, it's not just words, like it means these things. How do you really know and test yourself? What's a litmus test? Like the dead giveaway, like a lot of people say, your wallet and your calendar don't lie. or can't lie about what you really
Right.
value.
Right.
So what's like a dead giveaway in how do you really know if subconsciously and consciously you're really grounded in the fact in the I am, an image of God? And what I realize is that a lot of us make I am statements a lot.
Yeah.
We don't catch ourselves doing it, but
Yeah.
we make a lot of I am statements. And
And
I
it
would
seems
like,
petty. It seems
yeah,
unrelated.
it was like, what does I am a fill in the blank have to do with the image of God? I think it has a lot to do with it because you're saying I am. God actually calls himself I am,
Right.
and he actually doesn't finish this. He's just like, I am. This
I
is
just
what
am.
I am.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, okay. So this dude is just it's not like he's not answering it, but
It
he
is the
is.
answer.
He is
Yeah.
the answer to whatever the answer is. It's pretty meta, big idea, but
Right.
it made me think about like what do I say I am? And when I was in high school, my answer to that would have been very different to what I would answer like today. And I caution people in saying I am this, I am that
Right.
today, because I think we really, really, really need to stop and
Well, one
what
that,
we're speaking over ourselves
yeah.
when we say those things.
For example, one that is super relevant. We're recording this on November 1st, so election day is in 2 days. Um, I am a Democrat, I am a Republican, or I am, a libertarian or something else. What you
Yeah.
end up saying when you're saying that, it seems like, no, I'm just like, I'm putting myself in that category to give people, a thought about what I believe and stuff. But I do think that when you say that about yourself, what you're speaking over yourself is that those things are what is true about you and what it identifies you.
It's inherent, like it's spoken over you by God. Like
Yeah.
your existence is confined within
So scary.
an I am statement. And
Yeah. And
so
so it seems not, what's the
it's
word?
not a big deal, right? It's
Doesn't
just
seem
like,
harmful.
I'm just telling you what I am. And
Right.
I would like to say this as someone who has studied Spanish and lived in a Spanish speaking
Country.
country for a while. What I always noticed, I thought it was strange about Spanish. Now I really appreciate it. Is that instead of saying I am hungry, you would say yo tengo,
Hombre.
tener a hombre. Yeah, like I have hunger. I used to think that was weird. I was like, what do you mean you have hunger? Like
You
what
are
does that
hungry. What do you
mean? That's
mean?
such a weird
Yeah.
way to say that. And so it's hard for me because I'm thinking in English and then trying to, translate over, but that flow doesn't really work. Well, I think that's better to say that actually. I have hunger is better than I am hungry. Because like I said, I really think speaking any kind of I am statement is actually a pretty sacred thing that you really shouldn't screw around with.
Right.
Like you are not hungry. That's not who you are. That's not
Right.
like
It doesn't
that's
define you in any
define
way.
you as a human being. I am hungry. You're like,
Well, it may define you. I don't know.
it
Hope
shouldn't.
not.
It shouldn't. Yeah. And so when you say that, now that may be true that we're laughing about it, but yeah, if you say that over and over and over and over and over again, maybe it's like maybe you do start living out of that. That's my truth. I just am this.
And
That's
that
all.
becomes your like true north. It becomes the thing, life becomes whatever the next meal is.
Right.
Like life becomes something that like everything else starts to the I am statements you say about yourself start to rise in priority as far as like what you care about and what you identify as or with. And I really do think, even though it seems silly, it is super serious and super sacred because it starts to push those things that you're saying about yourself to the surface. And what starts to fall away is everything in between. So if you keep saying about yourself, like, I am hungry, that's what I am, it seems harmless, but what you're doing is prioritizing that part of your life, and it is becoming who you are, and everything in between every meal is irrelevant to till that next meal. If that makes sense. Like
Right.
to exercising your authority over your hunger becomes the thing that everything in between points to that.
And probably one of the most prominent I am statements that I hear people speak over themselves over and over and over again, to the point where it starts to define them and starts to compete with the image of God, is saying I'm an introvert or I'm an extrovert. And it's like, well, I can't do that, I'm an extrovert, or I can't do that, I'm an introvert. It's just like, what? That's not helpful. God didn't create you and say, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and he created humans in his image, but he made
Introverts and extroverts, he created.
But he
them.
made introverts and he made extroverts. He didn't say that. So I've seen people put that over themselves, though, and it's just like, you are speaking I am statements over you that are
really
actually
strong.
Like really strong, and it kind of creeps me out when I think about, like, what does God think about that? You saying I am this when God's I'm over you. That's something I just want people to seriously stop and think about.
Let's play that out. Let's play that out.
Yeah, well, for
Let me
me,
say,
let me
like,
tell my
I
story.
am an extrovert, therefore I can't spend time alone. I have to be around people
All the
I
time.
can't ever be in my own head. Like I have to just talk and be around people, and what's inherent there is like being alone freaks me out.
Right. And
Where you
for
get
an
the
introvert, I can't be around people. I can't speak in public. I can't,
right.
Be a leader. I can't
Can
do
only
any
be
of
with
that
people
stuff.
for a certain amount of time, and then I got to be by myself.
Right. Now, am I saying that all of us have personalities and all this? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that that's not what God spoke over you, is that you can only go this far and operate in these ways.
Right.
It's not true. And
I think
can
people
change.
have certain ways to recharge.
Sure.
That
You
is a
need to know
totally different
yourself.
thing.
Sure. And God rested too. And yeah, but it's like, but honestly, we're all the above, depending on the situation, how tired we are. Like just to put yourself in one category all the time is not true.
Because then you end up limiting yourself. If I say I'm an extrovert, I immediately have an allergic reaction to anything that sounds introverted, like being alone, which for me, I need to do. Though I am an extrovert, it's really healthy for me to practice some spiritual disciplines of silence and solitude and be with God. How do you think I'm going to get to know the character of God if I have noise the whole time? That obviously isn't going to work out. I need to spend some time alone with him. But if I continually speak, I'm an extrovert, I'm an extrovert, I'm an extrovert, I'm an extrovert over myself, it will actually factor into how I live my life and the decisions that I make, because I will consciously, subconsciously, but also consciously avoid certain situations because I'm an extrovert. And vice versa. I've seen people that are introverted avoid moments where they would have been able to communicate the good news to somebody, or situations where they would have gotten to connect with community, or situations where they would have gotten to speak some truth that they had over a group of people, a word from God maybe, and they've balked at that. They've walked away because they're an introvert. They don't do that. That's not what they do.
Right.
And so it plays into actually how we live, when really the only thing we should be saying I am about is I am a child of God. Like the things that God has said about me, those are the things that are true.
Right. I am made in his image. I am a child of God. I am loved by the Father, and nothing can separate me from the love of God. And there's let me tell my story a little bit here. So in high school, if you would ask me, like, who are you, I would have said I am this, that, and the other. It would have been, I'm tall, I am an athlete, I'm a Christian, just some of those things. I wouldn't have thought too hard about it. I wouldn't have felt like, ooh, I just made a big statement.
Right.
So it's like, okay, so flash forward to when I'm 29, I get diagnosed with cancer. Oh, I would have said I'm a musician,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and all this other stuff. I'm a singer, I'm a writer, I'm a guitar player. Well, flash forward to 29, I get diagnosed with cancer. Okay. And so as the chemo started to wear on me and the radiation started to wear on me, lots of things happen where it's like, I can't run anymore. I can't sing anymore. I can't play guitar anymore because I can't feel my hands because my nerve endings are dead now. And, I ended up in a wheelchair for a while because my bones got really affected by, my treatments, and, I needed a hip replacement. My bone was breaking every time I'd walk on it, that my hip was. So I ended up in a wheelchair for a while. It's like, I just remember all those things getting stripped away. It's like, okay, I'm a musician that can't, I am a musician. I am a musician. I am a musician. I've said that 1,000 times to myself and answered the I am question that way 1,000 times. Now I can't sing and I can't play my instrument anymore. So if that's who I am and I can't do that anymore, then I'm nothing. I'm absolutely nothing. If I can't run and jump and play and, do all those things, and I'm not an athlete anymore, I'm nothing. And then I very much remember some of those are like, yeah, I definitely need to put my confidence, my identity in something better than
Right.
those things, because
Right.
God can still do something with me that's important, even if he takes all that away from me.
Sure.
I remember doing that. I know the one that fell, the last domino that fell though, was just like, I thought it was fair to say that, like, I'm tall, I'm 6'5", I'm tall.
Yeah.
That's
Got
not
long
as, I'm
legs.
not,
It's just reality.
it's like a fact of nature. I'm not trying to say anything like I'm important. It's just like, I'm tall, but I remember being in the wheelchair and not being tall anymore, and realizing that, oh, even that can go away. Like, I'm not tall and I can't reach that thing or whatever. And realize that, like, a lot of my identity was wrapped up in being tall. And you're like, that's kind of trippy to think about. Like, and I just remember thinking in the hospital as all these things were getting stripped away from me, and it just laid bare, like, what is Nathan? Like, what is a Nathan? I don't know. Like, it's
What is
all
an
going
Nathan?
away. It's all going away. And I remember thinking, like, what is something that no matter how sick I get, how bad things go, even whether I live or die, that can't be stolen, can't be taken from me. And it's like, no matter what happens, how sick I get, if I live or die, if I can perform these things, or speak or sing
Yeah.
or play guitar, like, I still am a child of God. I am made in his image, and I am loved by the Father, and
Yeah.
nothing can separate me from that love.
Yeah.
And that is the strongest thing I could ever have grounded myself in and placed my identity in and my hope in, is just like, that is the truth. And not, it doesn't matter. Anything in the world can happen, literally.
Yeah.
And I am still those things.
Yeah.
And that has helped me through a lot of hard and dark, moments, and helped me walk through the valley of the shadow of death, because nothing can take it from me.
Right.
It's just is. And I can smile a little bit knowing it's like, I'm still made in the image of God, even
Right.
if I can't walk, talk, play guitar, throw a baseball. Like, if I can't stand,
Right.
I'm still made in the image of God. So,
And that changes then how you live and what you do with yourself, because you understand that it isn't about you being tall. It isn't about you being a musician or an athlete. It's about God and his kingdom. It's about pushing creation forward. It's about exercising your authority as an image bearer and creating shalom, creating good out of an order out of the things in the world, in your relationships, in creation. And it has nothing to do with even the things that God has gifted you with, like your height or your athletic ability, that God has granted you that ability, though it can be taken away. And then it's not about that anymore. It's about who you are because of who God is and your relation to him because of what Jesus has done. And then your life turns into, I think it becomes way better. Life becomes so much more secure because if we're riding on the things that we can accomplish, we are so screwed. But if we're riding on, I'm a child of God, I am created in his image, and I'm loved by him, and nothing can separate me from that. That last part, nothing can separate me from that. Those are things that are true. Then no matter what anyone says, no matter anything that ever happens, you are going to pursue goodness. You're going to pursue creating and wisdom in God's eyes, looking to him and his heart and his character and reflecting that in the world. That gives you a mission. You know, when I think about that, it's like, what am I? What do you want to be when you grow up? Those kind of questions, it's like, it inherently is saying like, you are your job, or you are the hobbies that you pursue at the end of, you know, in the middle of your life that you carry on through the end of your life. Like, oh, he was a woodworker, or he was a whatever. Mm-hmm. None of those things are bad, but instead saying you have an everlasting mission ordained by the only or eternally ordained organization in the world that has ever existed, to go on behalf of God and to harness all of the potential of creation, to bring all of the good out of everyone you ever come in contact with, to bring all of the good out of every piece of land, every building, every animal, every plant, every relationship. Like you, that is your job. That is your purpose. And you may be a lawyer while you're doing that. You may be an accountant while you're doing that. You may be a minister while you're doing that. You may be a lifeguard,
a baseball player, or a guitar
babysitter,
player,
like whatever, yoga instructor. Like you may be doing that, but
if those things go away, you won't.
Doesn't matter. If they go away, doesn't matter.
You'll still know who you are
and
what you're going to be up to for the rest of your life.
And it shouldn't change what you're up to.
Right. And
like what you're up to stays the same.
As a baseball player, I knew that I had failed the identity game, the identity statements, because when I got out of high school and I had a lot of injuries, I loved to play baseball. I wanted to go on to play baseball in college. It didn't happen for me because of all these injuries. It really messed with me, like really disoriented me in a very bad way. And I see so many other athletes where you're going to practice, you're working out, you're going, you're giving so much to your sport. If you're doing it for you, if you're doing it because you're trying to answer, who am I? I'm a baseball player, and is your answer. What happens when you don't play that game anymore?
Right.
I've seen so many students so disoriented and so lost coming out of that system where they can't go on and play again. And then if they never really figure that out, they end up having kids and push them into doing that thing that they weren't really able to do. And it perpetuates this, like, we are baseball people, we are athletes, and I didn't get this thing done, so I'm going to push my kids to get the thing done or whatever. It's just like, no, when I lost that, it made me look in the mirror and say, who are you? Like, who are you? Because you don't play that game anymore. And I thought that's what you were. So anyways, I see that so much in students where it's like you get out of high school and you're not a band person. You don't have a place to play your violin anymore. You don't have a place to play basketball anymore. It's just then that should clue you into that wasn't a big enough I am. Like that wasn't a solid enough I am. Because if high school can take that from you, if 1 year and one little transition in life can be like, oh, I can never do that again. Well, then it's not who you are. It's not worth putting your identity in. And so I want you guys to seriously think about that and say, where is your identity really? If you had to put everything that you do today on the altar and say, God, you can take it all away, would it bum you out? Or would you think, well, he'll give me another thing to do? You know, he'll give me, it's different. It's totally different playing baseball, saying I am a baseball player, than saying I'm an image of God who plays baseball. Those are totally different things. And if you lose baseball, you don't lose yourself.
Right.
You get hurt and it's like, oh, I'm still the image of God. I just have a new assignment now, because that's not the way God wants me to bear his image, at this point in time.
Yeah.
And so I am thankful. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not completely over that. It's been nice to be able to walk again, not be in a wheelchair. It's been nice to, but it did make me go really deep into, what can't be taken? What is the most rock solid thing I can put my
That's the
hope and
first
trust in?
principle here.
Yeah. And I encourage you all to think hard about that. And don't, please, some people learn by putting their hand on stoves. Some people learn by seeing their best friend put their hand on a stove. Some people hear stories about people putting their hands on stoves. Some people don't believe that stoves even exist. But some people feel pain and don't know where it's coming from, and they can't put two and two together. Please be the person that learns the identity issue from our stories, our experiences, or someone else's. Please don't put your identity in the wrong place, because it is a terrible, empty feeling to live through when you realize I don't know who I am anymore.
Yeah.
It's a very, very scary feeling that I don't want you to have to go through if you don't have to. So please listen.
Take our word for it.
Yeah, take our word for it. And it's no accident that this is addressed like right off the bat in Scripture.
Oh yeah, this is like pretty crucial, because the other thing I was thinking about while you're talking is, it's not that you can't have other things. It's not that like, well, I'm an image bearer now, so I can't be a baseball player anymore. Like, no, that's not it at all. It totally changes. It makes sense that it comes right off the bat, because anything that Adam and Eve are going to do, including like Adam naming the animals, like he is looking through the lens of being an image bearer, being loved by the Father, being a child of God. Totally changes his outlook, totally changes our outlook on the things that we do get to do, the things that God has created, things that God has blessed us to be able to do. Totally changes our outlook, our reasoning for why we're doing those things. And I think we spend a lot of energy and a lot of time pursuing things that we are trying to find identity in, chasing things that we think are going to define us. And I think what God is saying is like, no, like you are my kid. You're a king and a queen. Like, you are doing the way that you're chasing is not how a king, queen that is in the kingdom of God acts. And we're wasting a lot of time and energy chasing hard after things that are lies, that are not what we are. They don't identify us. And the freedom that comes from submitting to the will of God and to live as an image bearer who is looking at every situation and every thing that we're a part of and saying, what would God be doing here? What good can I bring here?
Yeah.
Totally changes your outlook.
Yeah. And it won't just happen. You won't just realize it if everything falls apart and you lose those things. You'll also find it in the other extreme of excelling at all those things and getting to the top of your sport or your whatever, and then realizing that it's still empty. Like that wasn't a big enough I am to fill your soul with.
Right.
I see people there at the top of their field in lots of ways, but still have a hole in their heart that only embracing the fact that you're the image of God can fill. So,
amen.
That's my that's as good as I can do.
Yeah, we love you guys. You are children of God. You were created in the image of God, and you are loved by the Father, and nothing can separate you from that.
Yeah.
And we hope that you believe that, and if not, that you would come to believe that before you experience it, or before you experience the negative, I should say.
Right. And trust that there's real abundant life in believing and knowing that and living into that truth.
It puts a new color on everything you do.
It's the truth. Yeah.
All right. Well, that was episode 19.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed that, and we'll see if we have anything else to talk about on the image of God front.
Yeah. Talk to y'all later.
Peace.
Peace.